Today we're going to be putting this bag of pinto beans into this food grade bucket to protect it from the light, keep it out of oxygen, keep those pests away so that way it remains fresh and ready for your use for years to come. Well, first we have our pinto beans. I've got a 25-pound bag of pinto beans along with some extra here because inside of this bucket we should store roughly about 34 pounds. Now these beans are going to go inside of this 5-gallon Mylar bag, and what's great about this bag is that once it's sealed up, it's really going to protect these beans from the outside environment, any oxygen that could get to this to make these things spoil faster than we want them to. Once these beans are in the bag and everything is ready to go, we're going to be using these oxygen absorbers to absorb the available or remaining oxygen in the bag once we get it sealed up. So once the beans are in the bag's in the bucket, we're then ready for our lid. This is a gamma lid. A gamma lid is a little bit different than the traditional lid you see with these buckets because what it does is it's a screw top, making it a lot easier for us to get in and out of the bucket. Now once this is all sealed up and ready to go, the last step is we're going to be taking our labeling tape and a Sharpie to mark what's in here, and we'll be using our food journal to be able to catalog exactly when we packaged it up and when we plan to rotate it out. So let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so what I've done is I've put the Mylar bag into this bucket, trying to get as much of the air on the outside of it out as possible. So let's go ahead and open up this guy. All right, so now what we're gonna do, now that we have 34 pounds of beans inside of this bucket with a little bit of our bag sticking up here, let's go ahead and jump into getting the oxygen absorbers in here, and we'll start the process of sealing up this bag, putting it away, and getting the lid on. So we're almost there. All right, so let's talk about oxygen absorption. These little packets, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put 5 of these inside of the bucket, and these are each 500 cc's. Now for each gallon of food that you're storing, plan for about 300 to 500 cc's. And since these are 500, we're gonna put 5 of them into the bucket. In another video, I'm gonna share with you guys, and link it up above, of how to actually store these things safely. So once you open up this big bag of oxygen absorbers, that they don't just go all bad on you. So check out the video on that. Try and get as much air out of this bag as possible. Really get this kind of tight in here, and these edges of these bags lined up as best as we can. So now what I've done here is I have got a hair straightening iron. They sell special tools to actually kind of crimp these bags closed, which you could do. My wife was kind enough to let me borrow her really nice hair straightener. I would not recommend you do this, but what I've got is a piece of parchment paper that we're gonna wrap around this just to kind of get a seal and see how this actually happens here, okay? You see, if my wife wasn't going to watch this video, I probably would just be trying this without the parchment paper, which is why I should be driving down to the CVS or Walgreens to go get a cheap, ooh, that's hot, cheap straightening iron here. So this is like a good way to test to see if there's actually air, because if air is coming out as you're pushing on this, that means the air can come back in, right? All right, so it's time to get the lid on. We've got our gamma lid, which is a nice screw top style, making it really easy to get this thing on and off. Nice tight lid. Of course, if you need to kind of give it some little love, you could use a hammer or a mallet to kind of get there, but it wasn't too hard just to get this thing on by hand. And let's get this thing to kind of screw down. So we've got our bucket, we've got our 34 pounds of beans inside here. Now what's left for us is to get this thing labeled and get this thing into our food journal. So let's go ahead and do that now. There's a couple bits of information I want to include on this bucket. So the first thing is its contents. So we'll say pinto beans. And then we want to include a little information about what is actually contents or volume here. So we said we have 34 pounds. All right, so we've got 34 pounds of beans in here, which actually equates out to be a roughly 440 servings. That's gonna give us a total calorie count of 35,200 calories. So if you were only eating pinto beans and you were consuming 2,700 calories a day, this is breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's a lot of beans. this would last you one person 13 days here, right? So this starts to give you kind of an idea of what this is actually doing. That this is a building block, this is a component in our food library. Of course, I'm not recommending or suggesting that the only thing you eat is beans or rice and beans over those days, but this helps to give you an idea of what is this actually doing for one person. Because if this is 13 days for one person, then it's half that for two. So you start to think about all the people that you might be planning for. These are the building blocks where I find that, at least in my experience when I started doing this, I was pretty shocked to find out that, this bucket wasn't like a month's worth of food for my whole family. Like in my mind, I just assumed that this was actually going to be more caloric value for our family than it actually is. All right, so our last step here is just cataloging exactly what we've done. So we know when we did this, what kind of rotation schedule we might need to follow in terms of kind of getting this food into our library and out, and making sure that we're always keeping our food as fresh and ready as possible. We just keep track of all of our things on our document here. And then as far as shelf life goes with this, I'm gonna put in the 8-year mark is where I'm gonna start thinking about, should I be taking this off the shelf and starting to use and consume it, or at least maybe take one of these buckets to understand if I have like 10 of these buckets or 80 of these buckets out there, taking one of them to kind of test to see how is it looking, is there something I need to do. So what I'm going to do, it being the end of 2021 at the time of this video, we'll say that in the end of 2029, we'll go ahead and start that process. So we should be able to reference these things here to understand kind of what's in it, be able to look at the bucket and understand kind of what our timeline is on that. So I hope today's video was super helpful in understanding and demystifying the process of actually having your own bucket of food, that what's in here, what the calories are, the number of days that this thing is going to provide for you, for your family, so that you're not wondering kind of what the heck you have, how long have you actually prepared for it. My name is Mike from The Enlightened Prepper. Hope today was super valuable for you guys. We'll catch you in the next video.